We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Avoiding global climate chaos will require a major transformation of society and the world economy that is unprecedented in scale, according to the UN in a landmark report, warning that time is running out to avert disaster.
The former Chinese head of Interpol, who went missing last month, is accused of accepting bribes, becoming the latest top official to fall in President Xi Jinping's anti-corruption dragnet.
International inspectors will be allowed into North Korea's dismantled nuclear testing site, according to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, after a meeting with Kim Jong-un.
And the Ebola virus has now claimed 113 lives in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo.
Amalma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. A landmark report released on Sunday from the world's top climate change group said rapid, far-reaching, and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society are required to ward off the worst impacts of global warming. Take a look.
Limiting warming to 1.5 degrees C implies changes on an unprecedented scale. It means deep emission reductions in all sectors, the use of a wide range of technologies, behaviour changes, and a significant increase of investment in low-carbon options.
Limiting global warming to 1.5 compared to 2 degrees would reduce the number of people exposed to climate-related risks and susceptible to poverty by up to several hundred millions by 2050.
Carbon dioxide emissions would need to decline substantially before 2030 to avoid warming of more than 1.5 degrees C in the middle of the 21st century, followed by large-scale carbon dioxide removal.
Now, the goal is to cap global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above pre-industrial levels, which the group said may prove nearly impossible unless swift action is taken. Limiting warming to that level would significantly reduce the risks of climate impacts such as water scarcity, flood and drought, extreme heat, tropical cyclones, biodiversity loss, and sea level rise, according to the report. Global warming, aka climate change, is caused by the burning of fossil fuels as oil, gas, and coal that release greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, which has warmed the planet to levels that cannot be explained by natural causes. Now, this report shows the longer we wait, the more difficult, the more expensive, and the more dangerous it will be, according to Bill Hare, a physicist with the nonprofit group Climate Analytics.
International inspectors will be allowed into North Korea's dismantled nuclear testing site, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Monday after a meeting with Kim Jong-un in which he said significant progress was made towards denuclearization. Pompeo met with the North Korean leader in Pyongyang on Sunday to rekindle stalled denuclearization talks following a landmark summit between Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore. North Korea took apart the Punggye-ri facility in the country's northeast in May, but has yet to allow international observers into the site to verify its claims. The facility, buried inside a mountain near the border with China, was the staging ground for all 6 of the North's nuclear tests.
But we had a good, productive conversation. As President Trump has said, there are many steps along the way, and we took one of them today. It was another step forward, and so this is, I think, a good outcome for all of us.
Trump met with Kim in Singapore in June for the first time summit, or the first ever summit between the two countries, resulting in what critics say was only a vague commitment by the North Korean leader towards denuclearization. The two sides have since sparred over the exact terms of the vaguely worded deal, with the U.S. pushing for a final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea, while Pyongyang has slammed Washington for its gangster-like demands for its unilateral disarmament. In a post on Twitter on Sunday, Mr. Trump was more restrained, writing that Mr. Pompeo had a good meeting with Chairman Kim today in Pyongyang, progress made on Singapore summit agreements. I look forward to seeing Chairman Kim again in the near future.
More than 5,000 people are feared missing in Indonesia 10 days after the devastating earthquake and the tsunami hit the country. Take a look. The official death toll rose to 1,944, but bodies are still being recovered. Meanwhile, a week after the twin disaster, Kando returned to her neighborhood for the first time since running for her life as the world around her collapsed. Petobo, a cluster of villages in Palu, was one of the worst hit. Much of it was sucked whole into the ground as the vibrations from the quake turned soil to quicksand in a process known as liquefaction. It is feared that beneath the crumbled rooftops and twisted rebar, a vast number of bodies remain entombed.
Perasaan saya itu sama seperti kejadian yang pertama. Saya itu tidak berhenti bergetar tadi.
There is an ongoing search for victims, but the government said it will stop recovery operations on Thursday. Now, some limited searching might continue, but large-scale searches with many personnel and heavy equipment would cease on October 11, according to the National Disaster Mitigation Agency. The government has allocated $37 million to help the victims of the quake.
The Chinese head of Interpol resigned as Beijing announced Monday. He was under investigation for allegedly breaking domestic law, while his wife voiced concern for his life following his disappearance. China had been tight-lipped about the fate of Meng Hongwei, who is also Vice Minister for Public Security, since French officials disclosed on Friday that he had been reported missing after leaving France for China last month. His wife, Grace, told reporters in Lyon, where Interpol is headquartered, that she was concerned after receiving a text message from her husband with a knife emoji.
Although I can't see my husband, we are always connected by heart. He will support me doing this. The matter belongs to the fairness and justice. The matter belongs to the international community. The matter belongs to the people of my motherland.
How are you? Fine, thank you. Thank you.
French authorities have opened an investigation and have placed Mr. Meng's wife under police protection after she received threats. China's National Supervisory Commission, which handles corruption cases involving public servants, broke the official silence early Monday, saying he had been placed under investigation for accepting bribes. Soon after, Interpol said it had received Meng's resignation with immediate effect. Meng, the first Chinese president of Interpol, was last heard from on September 25 as he left Lyon. Since 2012, Chinese President Xi Jinping has cracked down on officials accused of corruption. After Mr. Meng's disappearance was made public on Friday, speculation had mounted that he had been taken into custody. A number of top Chinese government officials, billionaires, and even a list an A-list celebrity have vanished in recent months. Last week, actress who disappeared in July emerged with a public apology and a fine of 883 million yuan, or that's $129 million, for tax evasion and other offenses.
In other news, the Philippine Senate on Monday passed on third and final reading a proposed measure seeking to protect women from catcalling and other forms of street-based harassment. Senate Bill 1558, or the Safe Streets and Public Spaces Act of 2017, seeks to penalize unwanted comments, gestures, and actions forced on a person in a public place without their consent, and is directed at them because of their actual or perceived sex, gender expression, or sexual orientation and identity. Senator Risa Ontiveros, the bill's main author and sponsor, hailed the approval of the measure as a major pushback against street-based sexual harassment. Citing a 2016 Social Weather Station survey, Ontiveros noted that 88% of women aged 18 to 24 years old has experienced sexual harassment in the streets. SB 1588 defines what behavior and actions constitute gender-based street and public places or public spaces harassment and their corresponding penalties. Now, these are categorized into light, medium, and severe violations. Light violations include cursing, wolf whistling, catcalling, leering, persistent requests for name and contact details, the use of words tending to ridicule on the basis of actual or perceived sex, gender expression, or sexual orientation and identity, including sexist, homophobic, and transphobic slurs, or the persistent telling of sexual jokes. For light violations, first-time offenders would be punished by a fine of 1,000 pesos, while a second offense shall be punished by 6 to 10 days imprisonment, or a fine of 2,000 pesos. Meanwhile, a third offense shall be punished by 11 to 30-day jail term, or a fine of 3,000 pesos. Medium violations include making offensive body gestures at someone, exposing private parts for the sexual gratification of the perpetrator, with the effect of demeaning, harassing, threatening, or intimidating the offended party. Now, under this category, the first offense shall be punished by a fine of 3,000. The second offense shall be punished by 11 to 30 days of imprisonment, or a fine of 4,000. And the third offense shall be punished by 1 to 6 months imprisonment, or a fine of 5,000. On the other hand, severe violations include stalking, all the acts mentioned in light and medium violations, when accompanied by touching, pinching, or brushing against the body of a person, or any touching, pinching, or brushing against the genitalia, anus, groin, breast, inner thighs, face, or buttocks, even when not accompanied by acts mentioned in the lighter violations. Now, under this category, the first offense shall be punished by 11 to 30 days imprisonment, or a fine of 4,000. The second offense shall be punished by 1 to 6 months of imprisonment, or a fine of 5,000. And the third offense shall be punished by arresto mayor, 1 to 6 months of imprisonment, or a fine of 10,000. Now, besides the fines, first-time offenders in all the categories shall also have to attend a gender sensitivity seminar by the Philippine National Police in coordination with the local government unit and the Philippine Commission on Women.
A Spanish court found an 85-year-old former doctor guilty of taking a newborn away from her mother under the Franco dictatorship, but refrained from convicting him in the first trial of the so-called stolen baby scandal. The Madrid court ruled that the deed was committed too long ago for the defendant to be legally convicted. It found former gynecologist Eduardo Vela guilty of taking Inés Madrigal, now 49, away from her mother as a newborn in 1969. During and after the 1939-1975 dictatorship, thousands of babies were taken away from their mothers, who were told they had died after birth. Activists say there are hundreds of similar cases dating back to the Franco era that have failed to make it to court because of a lack of evidence or because the time limit to file charges has passed. Prosecutors are seeking an 11-year jail sentence for Vela for falsifying official documents, illegal adoption, unlawful detention, and certifying a non-existent birth.
A deeply polarized Brazil stands at a political crossroads as the bruising first round of the presidential election left voters with a stark choice in the runoff between far-right firebrand Jair Bolsonaro and leftist Fernando Haddad. Take a look.
Pode continuar nesse rumo do bolsonarismo. Não queremos amanhã ser o que a Venezuela é hoje.
O Brasil será Bolsonaro, nós vamos ganhar, porque nós estamos lutando e quem luta vence. É patriota, é o povo, é a dignidade de ser brasileiro, um povo rico e inteligente. Falta apenas ter um grande governo.
Nós queremos unir os democratas do Brasil, nós queremos unir as pessoas que têm atenção aos mais pobres desse país, tão desigual. Nós queremos um projeto amplo para o Brasil, profundamente democrático, mas também que busque de forma incansável justiça social.
Deixa queimar! Deixa queimar! É todo dia! Contra o machismo, homofobia!
Toda bandeira bem-vinda, mas vem todo ano!
E não, ele nunca, ele jamais! Ele não! Alerta, mulherada! É fora do
Toda bandeira bem-vinda, mas...
20 people have been killed after a limousine careened out of control in what investigators described Sunday as the most deadly transportation accident in the United States for nearly a decade. All 18 occupants of the SUV-style stretched limo died along with 2 pedestrians on Saturday afternoon in upstate New York, Police Deputy Superintendent Christopher Fiore told a news conference. He said the 2001 Ford Excursion had failed to stop at an intersection and continued into a parking lot, ultimately crashing into a parked car. Investigators have not yet established if the victims were wearing seatbelts. Early reports suggested the car had been taking the group to a wedding reception, but later reports said they were traveling to a birthday party. NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt later told a press conference that it was one of the biggest losses of life we've seen, adding that it was the most deadly transportation accident since 2009. The tragedy unfolded outside the Apple Barrel Country Store and Cafe in the town of Shohairi, southwest of the state capital Albany, and a 3-hour drive north of New York City.
Now, smiling for the cameras in the shadow of the pyramids, U.S. First Lady Melania Trump wrapped up her 4-nation Africa tour in Egypt on Saturday, far from the political tumult back home. Take a look. Now, in rare comments to the press, Melania Trump said her trip, which also took in Ghana, Malawi, and Kenya, was designed to show the world that, quote, we care. Asked about reports earlier this year that her husband, President Trump, referred to African nations and Haiti as, pardon our language, shithole countries, the First Lady said, nobody discussed that with me. Take a listen.
Nobody discussed that with me, and I never heard him saying those comments. And that was an anonymous source, and I would leave it at that. Well, I don't always agree what he tweets. And I tell him that. I give him my honest opinion and honest advice. And sometimes he listens and sometimes he doesn't. But I have my own voice and my opinions. And it's very important for me that I express what I feel.
Now, Melania praised her husband's Supreme Court choice, Brett Kavanaugh, and said she was glad he and his accuser had a chance to be heard following allegations of sexual assault prior to Saturday's Senate approval of his nomination.
If we're talking about the Supreme Court and Judge Kavanaugh, I think he's highly qualified for the Supreme Court. I'm glad that Dr. Ford was heard. I'm glad that Judge Kavanaugh was heard. FBI investigation was done, is completed, and Senate voted. I will move on that, and I think all the victims, we need to help all the victims, no matter what kind of abuse they had. But I'm against any kind of abuse or violence.
Now, Mrs. Trump finished the Egypt leg of her tour with a visit to the Giza pyramids near Cairo, where she posed at the foot of the Sphinx wearing a white Panama hat. On the previous leg of her tour in Kenya, her choice of a white colonial-style pith helmet while on safari drew some criticism on Twitter, with one person comparing her look to that of a colonial administrator. Take a listen.
We just completed an amazing trip. We went to Ghana, we went to Malawi, we went to Kenya. Here we are in Egypt. I want to talk about my trip and not what I wear. And that's very important, what I do, what we're doing with USAID, and what I do with my initiatives. And I wish people would focus on what I do, not what I wear.
Eagle News International will be right back.
Stay tuned.
Health is our most important asset.
The Philippine peso against the US dollar firm on Monday, but the Philippine Stock Exchange Index fell as investors digest news overseas, such as the 1% cut in Chinese banks' reserve requirements ratio. The local currency finished the week's first trading day at 54.185 from 54.23 Friday last week, which a trader attributed to risk-off sentiment given the latest decision of the People's Bank of China to cut banks' RRR. For the day, the unit opened at 54.25, little changed from the 54.3 in the previous session. The currency pair strengthened to as much as 54.15, but also hit 54.3, resulting to an average of 54.232. Volume reached 45.4 US dollars or million US dollars, way higher than the $592.5 million at the week or the end of last week. The currency pair is seen to trade between 54.10 and 53 or 54.30 Tuesday. On the other hand, the PSEI shed 0.39% or 27.38 points to 7,050.82 points.
Meanwhile, Chinese stocks tumbled Monday as investors returned to a pileup of negative news that accumulated over a week-long holiday, from disappointing economic data to worsening tensions with the United States. The benchmark Shanghai Composite Index slipped 3.72% or 104.84 points to 2,716.51. The Shenzhen Composite Index, which tracks stocks on China's second exchange, fell 3.83% to 1,386.28. Hong Kong stocks sank 1.20% in afternoon trade. Chinese markets were already the world's worst performing this year, driven down largely by government attempts to rein in credit and the worsening trade fight with Washington. But more bad news emerged while Chinese financial markets slumbered last week. Telecoms equipment maker ZTE led tech shares downward on Monday, falling 8.14% after a Bloomberg News report last week said China had inserted special microchips into computer goods exported to the U.S. to steal technology secrets. The report, which raised the specter of further U.S. retaliation against China, had already caused Chinese IT shares in Hong Kong to tumble on Friday.
Maritime trade is stronger than it's been for 5 years, but while the prospects for seaborne trade are positive, the future for shipping is in doubt due to looming trade wars and restructuring, the UN said on Wednesday. The warning from UNCTAD or UNCTAD, the UN Conference on Trade and Development, follows a healthy 4% increase in global seaborne commerce in 2017. Escalating protectionism and tit-for-tat tariff battles will potentially disrupt the global trading system, which underpins demand for maritime transport. UNCTAD Secretary General Mukisa Kituyi said, according to the review of maritime transport 2018, 10.7 billion tons of goods were transported last year, and nearly half were dry bulk commodities. These include iron ore bound for China, the main factor in global shipping growth. This positive trend is forecast to continue at a rate of 3.8% by volume until 2023, the UNCTAD report says. Overshadowing the positive outlook are concerns about trade tensions between China and the U.S., the world's two largest economies. More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
Stay with us.
MTRCB ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Higpitan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
How will we keep the prices down?
Pero baka matulungan niyo ako dito. May kaibigan ako taga-Kapitolyo. Baka kilala niyo ho?
Welcome back. I'm Jeffrey Angeles, and this is Environment News. Avoiding global climate chaos will require a major transformation of society and the world economy that is unprecedented in scale, the UN says in a landmark report that warns time is running out to avert disaster. Watch this.
Carbon dioxide emissions would need to decline substantially before 2030 to avoid warming of more than 1.5 degrees C in the middle of the 21st century, followed by large-scale carbon dioxide removal.
A strong aftershock sent panicked residents fleeing into the streets on Sunday, hours after a 5.9 magnitude earthquake killed at least 12 people along Haiti's northwest coast. Saturday's quake, centered 12 miles northwest of Port-de-Paix, injured more than 188 people, damaging or leveling several homes and public buildings. The tremor rattled the capital Port-de-Prince, sparking fear among residents still reeling from the massive 2010 earthquake that left at least 200,000 people dead and 300,000 more injured. President Jovenel Moïse and Prime Minister John Henry Kent traveled to the affected area to view the damage and coordinate relief efforts. Cities across Spain are grappling with electric scooters that have popped up on sidewalks across the country, helping riders zip around but exasperating drivers and pedestrians. In Madrid, public opinion is divided over the hundreds of electric scooters which California-based startup Lime, partly owned by ride-hailing Uber and Google parent company Alphabet, has made available since mid-August. Unlike schemes involving shared bicycles that typically must be left in docking stations, the scooters are dockless, leaving riders responsible for parking them out of the way. The next rider can find the nearest scooter with a smartphone app, unlock it, and use it for free.
Es muy cómodo porque lo puedes coger en cualquier lado de la calle. Lo puedes encontrar debajo de tu casa, como a 2 minutos de tu casa.
Pues es una locura, los patinetes eléctricos que van, se meten por el carril bus, se nos meten por el carril bus taxi y más que complicaciones. No se les ve, parece que van andando y cuando se quieren dar cuenta se cruzan delante del coche.
Less than 3 weeks after a tornado tore through the Ottawa-Gatineau region, members of the local community are still picking up the pieces. Members and staff at the heart of the Iglesia ni Cristo and the Felix Y. Manalo opened their doors to help the victims. Sabir Mufti reports. Sabir?
On September 21st, 2018, 6 tornadoes hit the Ottawa-Gatineau area. Environment Canada confirms that one of the tornadoes was in fact an EF3 category, the strongest of the tornadoes formed in Kinburn, which traveled through Dunrobin and crossed the river into Gatineau. EF3 wind speeds are estimated to have reached up to 265 kilometers per hour. This has caused damage to dozens of homes and businesses, uprooting trees and injuring people. Hydro lines were ruined, leaving hundreds of thousands of residents without power for days.
I was here when this happened, and lots of people crying, lots of people with no insurance, lost everything. Thank God that my mom was insured, so she didn't lose everything, but lost a lot still.
When we saw it coming, we saw the roof going in the tornado and get out, and I said, we're dying. That was the only thing in my head. That's it. That's the end of the world. We're dying.
Sabi ko, salamat Lord na okay lang kami at naligtas kami.
The hardest hit areas of the city are Dunrobin and Gatineau. In the Dunrobin community, more than 50 homes have been destroyed, and city officials have said more than half of them need to be rebuilt. Volunteers have come to help restore the community.
Who are here to help those who were affected with the recent tornado that happened within this area. We even have some of our organizers and helpers from the Toronto area that have actually traveled here to help in this Aid for Humanity spearheaded by the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ.
In Ottawa, the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ, led by Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, along with the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, its humanitarian arm, are here today for the Aid to Humanity outreach event, benefiting those affected by the tornadoes that happened here in September 21st, 2018, both in Ottawa and Gatineau.
I appreciate from the bottom of my heart, and I guess all the people will appreciate this foundation of helping out people, because like I said, I've seen people crying and lose everything with no insurance. So people like this organization that you guys take part of is very important.
We have to say that the city, the population were really, really good with us. They were really charitable, and we had the police, the fire department were all there, so we felt secure because they were there.
Maraming salamat kasi napifeel nyo yung mga pangangailangan ng mga kapwa ninyong Pilipino.
Meanwhile, in Gatineau, cleanup is also underway. Civil engineers escort residents into their apartment buildings and residences to see what they can salvage from the ruins. Up to this day, affected residents are still picking up the pieces. Communities are still recovering from the destruction felt in Ottawa and Quebec. Reporting from the Aid to Humanity in Dunrobin and Gatineau, I'm Sabir Mufti, 1 with 25.
For the first time in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, new therapeutic drugs are part of the Ebola response. 5 investigational therapeutics have been approved for use, and 4 have been used so far. As of the 1st of October, 47 patients have been provided with the therapeutics. Patients are now receiving them within hours of Ebola confirmation. Watch this.
So I will say there's a mix of emotions when you go into the Ebola treatment unit and deliver one of these therapeutics. On one hand, you're incredibly nervous because not many people have given these drugs before, and not many people have received them. But on the other hand, there's a sense of excitement and a sense of hope, because for the first time we have something that we can use to directly fight against the virus. And so for me, that's incredibly, it gives me an incredible amount of hope. I also think the important thing is that we're actually improving access to the same care regardless of where you are, whether you're in a resource-rich area or a resource-limited area. And for me, that equal access to care is a critical issue. Yeah, so I think this really represents a paradigm shift in our treatment approach to Ebola virus disease. And it really represents that next step after more aggressive supportive care. Now we have the opportunity to give these therapeutics that potentially could act against the virus. So for me, this really represents a monumental step forward in terms of what we have available to patients with this disease.
The Ebola virus has now claimed 113 lives in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, as experts from 7 East African countries completed meetings in Uganda focused on response to the outbreak. Burundi, South Sudan, Tanzania, Kenya, and Rwanda also attended the meetings. Congolese officials quelled last week's rumor that the disease had spread into Uganda, but the World Health Organization and regional officials warned that the risk of Ebola crossing the border remains high. And that is all for me. I'm Jeffrey Angeles, I'm one with 25. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
In mixed martial arts, Khabib Nurmagomedov thwarted Conor McGregor's bid to regain the UFC lightweight crown Saturday with a dominant submission victory in a grudge match marred by a post-fight brawl. Nurmagomedov improved to 27-0 in his professional career, 11-0 in UFC bouts, with a win at sold-out T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The UFC lightweight champion had McGregor on the ground less than a minute into the opening round and kept the Irish fighter, a former UFC featherweight and lightweight champion, on his back for much of the fight. McGregor managed to stay on his feet for most of the third round, but the once-feared striker couldn't hurt Nurmagomedov in the fourth, and the champion took him down again. McGregor managed to roll away briefly before Nurmagomedov ended up in a full mount, getting him in a brutal rear naked choke that had McGregor tapping out at 3 minutes 3 seconds of the round. Nurmagomedov had barely released his hold when he launched himself over the octagon fence, apparently targeting McGregor's swinging partner Dylan Dennis. As security tried to quell the chaos in the crowd, 2 people from Nurmagomedov's camp leapt into the cage, one of them taking a shot at the exhausted McGregor, who eventually departed in a huddle of security personnel. Nurmagomedov was also hustled out, surrounded by security officers, as the pro-McGregor crowd jeered and threw drinks at him. In the post-fight press con, Nurmagomedov apologized to the fans at the Athletic Commission of Nevada.
I know my father gonna smash me when I go home because I know he's gonna smash me. and Nevada, sorry, Vegas, sorry, and Alhamdulillah, undefeated UFC lightweight champion.
Nurmagomedov said that he came to the UFC to change the sport, and he blames the media for all the negative things in the sport.
People, little bit, it's not people, I think it's media. Media a little bit change MMA. This is respect sport, you know. This is not trash talking sport. This is respect. So like I told you before, guys, I want to change this game. I don't want people talk shit about like opponents, talk shit about his father, like religion. You cannot talk about religion. You cannot talk about nation. You know, guys, you cannot talk about this stuff.
In football, 19-year-old sensation Kylian Mbappe scored 4 goals in the space of 13 seconds, half minutes, as 5-0 victory Paris Saint-Germain trashed Lyon on Sunday. Here's EBC Sports correspondent Valerie Gonzalez reports.
Teenage sensation Kylian Mbappe insisted that he should have scored more despite netting 4 times in a magnificent individual display as Paris Saint-Germain thrashed Lyon on Sunday. The 19-year-old scored 4 goals in a space of 13 second-half minutes as a 5-0 victory saw PSG set a new French top-flight record of 9 straight wins to start a season. But Mbappe did miss several earlier chances as he thrice denied when one-on-one with Lyon goalkeeper Anthony Lopes and struck the post before grabbing his first goal just after the hour mark. In an interview, Mbappe said, "I missed opportunities. I should have scored more. I keep working and I never doubted. I knew I had the support of my teammates. I often say that as long as an attacker is creating chances, everything is fine." Mbappe took the World Cup by storm in the summer, becoming the first teenager since Pelé in 1958 to score twice in the final and winning the award for the tournament's best young player. He has started the new league 1 season in similar fashion and already has 8 goals to his name from just 5 appearances. PSG are already 8 points clear at the top of the table after breaking an 82-year-old record set by Olympique Lillois in 1936, as Mbappe looks to win the title for the 3rd straight campaign after also lifting the trophy with Monaco in 2016-17. Mbappe said, "It was the work of the whole team, but the most important thing was the record." He added, "I insisted we talk about the collective. We will have time to talk about me, Neymar. We wanted to win. We wanted this record at all costs." Reporting for EN Sports, I am Valerie Gonzalez, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Val. Meanwhile, the Philippines search for a first Asian Para Games gold medal. Final came as para-swimmer Ernie Gawilan ruled the 2018 Continental Games on Sunday, October 7 at the Gelora Bung Karno Aquatic Stadium in Jakarta, Indonesia. The 27-year-old clocked 2 minutes 52.43 seconds in the men's 200-meter individual medley SM7 to bag the gold, as Chinese Taipei's Chen Liangda clocked in 2 minutes 55.90 seconds and India's Jadhav Soyash Narayan 2 minutes 56.51 seconds rounded out the podium winners. Gawilan, the Davao City native born with no legs and an incomplete arm, also snagged a silver in the men's 50-meter freestyle S7 with a 31.93 second, clocking behind gold medalist Singapore's Wei Sung To 29.1 second. Narayan also finished with another bronze with a time of 32.16 seconds. Aside from Gawilan's double medal opening day performance, the Philippines nabbed 2 more medals for a 5th place standing in the medal tally. Gawilan's teammate Gary Bihino bagged the bronze in the men's 100-meter backstroke with a 1 minute 28.54 seconds, clocking behind silver medalist Ong Miat of Myanmar 1 minute 24.84 seconds and gold winner Yang Hong of China 1 minute 18.97 seconds. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez and I'm 125.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and
we're 1 with 25.